It's Jefferson, climbs the ladder. Oh my goodness! Come
on! What is up, Jabronis? JJ back here with Coop talking a little NASCAR. We're going bowling today, Coop. So we'll talk more on that. But before we do, I do want to always address. You guys know me by now. I'm not naive or ignoring of what we can call constructive comments, right? And I think anybody that's watching this show now could easily take this as not constructive. But I do want to talk briefly through it. So Richie, if you're still watching, great to have you here despite the negative comments. NASCAR picks me off all the time. Wasted hour of show just to give you drivers bid to be even close to optimals. I bet anyone the two highest score plays will be optimal. Okay, so the reason I want to bring these to the forefront is because of a few things. Number one, a guy like Richie, it would almost ask, why are you even betting this sport if this is how you feel about it? Or why are you even gambling on the sport if this is how you feel about it? But I think it's like we say every week, like this sport has some of the highest variance of any sport you'll play in the DFS streets. And I assume, Richie, because you're not talking about betting, I assume you're just talking about DFS. It makes it tough, right? So week in and week out, obviously we talk through, your quote unquote chalky plays and who you can kind of find for leverage and where you can kind of be different. And yeah, this sport's been tough this year on the DFS front, maybe on the betting front. If you're pre-pot committed with strong odds, then you can obviously leverage yourself in other ways to protect your bets. But as far as DFS goes, yeah, it's kind of tough. It's a sport where you consistently have to take stands, and it's a sport that consistently has a tremendous amount of variance, whether it's late race nonsense, whether the strategies don't work. I think at the end of the day, you're really just trying to leverage ownership and try to find your pivots based off of that. I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's been a great NASCAR season for me in particular. It certainly has not. So I think that all you can try to do is just continue to be, continue to try to improve as best you can day in and day out. Look, last year was a great year for me in NASCAR. This year, it really just hasn't been. Me personally, I can't speak on your behalf. But overall, look, all we try to do is give you perspectives of it all and let you guys build from there. There is nothing in this sport that's basically Bible. If you're playing this sport with the idea that I'm going to enter 50-50s and I'm always going to win, this is a sport where you really need to try to target your leverage spots and play tournaments. If you're playing this game for cash or with cash options, it means you're likely playing a bunch of place differential guys. Your lineups probably look very similar to everybody else. And I think at the end of the day, it's all about trying to find your leverage spots and where to be different and where to give yourself the maximum upside over the course of the season. Sunday by Sunday, yeah, you're gonna find yourself with a fist up your ass here and again. But for someone like myself, like if I lose at this sport 8 out of 10 weeks and I win 2 out of 10 weeks, that's a great season for me. And keep in mind that that's only hitting at 200, right? So overall, Coop, do you have any perspective you want to add there in relation to, kind of how we try to break these down week in and week out and try to find the quality plays where variance can be had in a sport that's very volatile?
No, you're exactly right. You're basically shooting for that lower owned 10%, 12%, 13% driver, that makes your lineups different. And, if you don't take those chances, one, you're either going to split with a bunch of duplicated lineups, or two, you're just not going to get there because all the chalk doesn't always hit. So, I agree with exactly what you said.
Yeah, and I think we have another week here where, of course, the fun old ownership percentages are pretty high on place differential, and that's why. That's because we have a race with only 90 laps, Coop. Definitely not a race where you're going to love dominators. Not to say you can't have one, right, or whatever, but it's not going to be a race where there's going to be a lot of dominators. Now, before we go into your track preview, let's give a quick shout out to the chat. My guy Jake, always love Magic wanting Dunk Coop to make your life swear. Yeah, I mean, exactly, Jake. Like, obviously, we're going to try to give you perspectives, leverage the perspectives as best you'd like. What we try to really do is we really try to convey where your biggest risk is going to be as you're building your lineups, right? And what I mean by that is it could be as simple as, hey, look, you want to play this dude who's 60% owned, they're going to be 50% owned today. That's fine. Do understand where your risk is with that. If he does really well, you're going to be moving up with the whole field. If you fade him and he does poorly, you're moving up way past the field. Whereas, we just try to give you that perspective in certain things. We try to talk on good chalk, bad chalk. And Jake, always appreciate you being here every week. Same thing with you, Smokestack. Obviously, always love having you here week in and week out. Jimmy B, my guy Jason. So always appreciate you guys all around. We got Uncle Terry in the house, or as some call him, Terry. And so we'll talk on a bunch of things. Obviously, always love the comments. So feel free to poke around with any questions you have. We already got 70 of you in here, so feel free to start liking the video. We're not asking you for blood. We're not asking you for transfusions. We're just asking you to take a break from the porn on the rest of your tabs. Just go ahead and like this video. It's really, really not that hard. Maybe some of you are actually touting crypto as well while the show is going on. You can go ahead and pause that for a second also while you just simply like the video. So, Coop, right before I get to you, let's talk on our guy Jason Hamlet, who, let's be honest, Jason Hamlet, is he in witness protection these days? I used to love doing these shows with him as an added component of it. I'm sure he's a busy guy, but he's not too busy to not do that free article for us every week. Do you think Jason has like a dual lives where like he's just always busy and filling up both schedules, or what do you think is going on?
He's out hunting probably.
Hunting,
doing something
that's
like
fair.
That, man.
That's fair. He's a big game guy.
Yes, he is.
A big game hunter. So no, I respect it. And Jason, if you're watching, I'm just busting chops. But I do want to say that your article that you do every week is obviously very fruitful for anybody for that matter, because why? It's free. Head over to runpuresports.com, go to the article page. You'll see his entire write-up he does every week. And look, just read through it. I promise you it's going to take you about 15 minutes to fully read through it. And if it takes you 15 minutes to fully read through it, take a second to think about how long it takes him to write it. Okay. It's a lot of detail. It's a lot of good content. So head over to runpuresports.com. It is a free article, but in relation to today, for those that are new, we go through Coop's playbook, where he talks on, dominators that make the most sense, even at a track like this, where they're going to be limited as far as how many you should have, place differential drivers, where the meat of your lineup gets built week in and week out, middle tier drivers, where some would argue 1 to 2 of these drivers every week is why you will win a tournament, and your value town drivers, your 1 driver to 2 drivers ish, where you can round out your lineup to get in those studs. So Coop, I'll step it over to you to talk on the track and why we're going bowling today.
Yeah, it's 90 laps, 8 more laps than last week. About a half a mile longer course than what we had last week. And again, we saw a big thing last week where we had a caution at the beginning of the race, and then that was it. The rest of the race was running green flag, so that very well could happen again with no caution flags at the end of the stages. So that's a big thing you got to take into consideration. I do think you'll see a little bit more passing this week than what we saw last week. How they did the restart zone last week really spread the field out. At the beginning of that race tremendously. We have a more traditional restart zone this week. So, not to say they're not going to get far away from each other, but they shouldn't be as far away as last week. One of the things that really stuck out to me last week was we have a bunch of cars that are really equal to each other, to be quite honest with you. If you look at the green flag speed of the cars from last week, the difference between first place and 26th place was 1 second or less, which is really crazy. Don't see that big of a group that often, and usually, even within the top 5, you see it be a little bit more than a second. So that right there just goes to show, I think, how important the track position is. And if a particular driver can gain that track position, it's going to be, advantageous for them. And obviously from a DFS perspective, it's going to be, advantageous too, especially if they started farther back. So, we've got to look at that and see how that plays out. But the caution flags is what's really going to determine this whole race, and if we have any or how many we have. I think we'll probably have 1 or 2. Like if you look at the history of this race, you take out the stage cautions, and that's typically what they fall with is 1 or 2. So, that's what we have. I think, this does require more speed, so to say, than what the other road courses do. The average, track around here is 118 miles an hour, and it's the only road course that gets over 100 miles an hour. So, speed is much more important here than, let's say, some of these other races.
Yeah, I think obviously a lot to talk through. And DD here seems like big place differential drivers on road courses has been suboptimal without the caution at stage breaks. I know you said a bit that you think passing is going to be a little better here.
It's not going to be great by any means, but I think it'll be a little bit better.
A little better than what it's been, right? And it's been pretty abysmal on these tracks overall. So, DD, I definitely can't disagree with that perspective. I think that this year you should see this track you should see a little more improvement there, but nothing like, to Coop's point, nothing outrageous, right? I think that's been the big piece where you've seen these guys that start in the back, and it's like, hey, look, they only got to move up a few spots, and even that's kind of been a struggle in certain capacities, especially the chalk. Like the chalk in these races has just not been great. Now, the difference today is you have some guys from the back that are like really cheap when you consider their win equity. But needless to say, Coop, on your end, well, actually, before we do that, I just want to touch on Jake's point here, cover my own takes and appreciate the perspective given in the show. And the chat can never have too much info, and sometimes hearing somebody else's take can get you off different ways. I want to be very clear for the folks that have been watching this show from onset. We've been doing this show for a few years now. This is the way to approach this show as a viewer. Okay, as a viewer, your job is to really try to take perspectives and leverage them on your own lineup builds. You will very rarely see me, and I do this occasionally, and Coop does this occasionally as well, very rarely take a complete stand, like a lock stand on this show on a driver, because it's hard, right? The sport has so much variance. A guy could be cruising along, everything's great, tire falls off, ruins the entire race, pit crew screws him, ruins the entire race, somebody hits him, screws him, ruins the entire race. There's just so much of that can go wrong, which makes it hard to kind of take complete stands, but we can give you extra perspective. Go ahead, Coop.
I mean, I was going to say, like, Ty Gibbs from yesterday is a perfect example. Like, he led 70 of the 80 laps. He started first, but, on that last lap, he got taken out, and he finishes 17th. And, him leading 70 laps is a lot in a road course, but in reality, it's not a lot because, he lost 16 points place differential. Plus that finishing position, it just crushed him. And the guy dominated 98% of the race. So, I know there were a lot of people that were quite, perturbed by that. And they saw their, potential winnings go from, probably good to none at all.
Yeah, and it's definitely interesting, right? It's like every race you could probably make a claim that 2 or 3 drivers were the right plays that didn't work out. Blah, 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 blah. I get that. I think from a process perspective, that makes the sport even harder to kind of really differentiate between, was this a good play that just didn't work out, or was this really a bad play from the start that was kind of lucky that it was, or fortunate that it was working out?
Right. I mean, it just shows you how risky it is to take somebody up front on these road courses when the laps are so limited. Whereas if that was a 1.5 miles to, a short track, anywhere from 150 to, 300 lap race, and the driver leads 150 laps and he gets taken out on the last lap, it's not going to kill you like it killed you yesterday, because you're obviously going to get a lot more points at leading 150 laps, and then you got your fastest laps too. But it just shows you how much risk there is taking these drivers to start up front on road courses.
Yeah, it's been interesting to say the least, and Brad, appreciate you. Thanks for all the work you do. Guys, speak to you. That's appreciated. Yeah, I mean, we're not going to sit here and bullshit you. That's for sure. We're going to talk to you the good, bad, and the ugly, and sometimes the really ugly. Okay, so we're not going to hide from you in that respect. Mayor the douche. Would Mayor screw something up big time yesterday, Coop? I wasn't fully sure there.
He's the one that spun Gibbs.
I missed that. Interesting. And I'll be honest,
but he didn't really spin him. He basically took him out. He ran right into him.
And that's part of the added variance, right? The part that sucks, the part that's hard to control and hard to even predict, right? Like it's, is this guy going to get into a spat with this guy, and then, stubborn behavior is going to take over, and people's egos and whatnot's going to take over. I'll tell you this, Rance, it's far from impossible. I've just found the way to truly approach it week in and week out is kind of knowing that you're going to lose 7 to 8 weeks out of 10. If you're entering tournaments with the idea of multi-entering, you're going to lose at least 7 to 8 times out of 10. I know that sounds bad, but if you have your ownership projections a certain way where you're really taking semi-stands, those times when you're right, you are going to be super live to win a lot of money, like super live. So yes, it can be a bit diminishing on the confidence at times and humbling at best. but there are ways to win at this sport. I think that's been shown over the years. I mean, shit. Yeah, this has been a blah year for me for sure in NASCAR. But I mean, last year I had the 100K hit, and I think I had 6 20K hits in this sport. It was a really great year. And again, I felt like I was doing the same thing last year that I was this year. The difference has been there's just been a lot of fun variance based on the sport. And maybe I had some things go my way as well last year. Even the big race that I won, I think there was 0 cautions all race, like 0, which makes a difference, right? Makes a difference.
So I mean, it all comes down, and it's just not NASCAR; it's any sport. Like your process and how your process is. Like you got to believe in your process, and you can't just continually change different processes. Every different slate, week, whatever you want to do it by. And I think that's what you do, is you stick by your process. And like you said, sometimes it does well. A lot of times it doesn't. But if that process is the right process to get you to those winners, then yeah, that's what you do.
Exactly. So I always appreciate the commentary from the chat. And again, we're not going to hide from bad comments. So if your goal is to kind of trash us, if anything, we're going to bring it to the forefront and kind of talk through it. So appreciate the comments, always good, bad, and different. So thank you for everybody chiming in. And while you're chiming in, you can like the video. If you're taking time to type a comment, could also take time to just like the video. But always appreciate you guys all around. All right, so Coop, let's begin your playbook. Obviously, we're already running a bit behind schedule, which is my fault.
It's all good though.
Yeah, the same thing. It's all about the positive mentality. See, right, Coop. So
it's not like Holden. It's not like somebody like Holden who's going to go off the ledge, and he's not even talking about something that's related to DFS.
Exactly. Like he's talking about how he banged the Golden Girls, in the early 50s, and who cares? And who cares about that, right? I mean, I think people just want relative content. So your playbook, your dominators. This week is a semi-interesting week again because you're just not going to have a lot of dominators at all. I'd argue you'll barely have one dominator, if that. So, Coop, walk me through what that's going to look like on your end from a dominator perspective.
Yeah. So, the dominator piece is kind of similar to what it was last week, and where the guys who are starting up front are not the most expensive drivers. So which was similar to last week. And you've got to make choices. Again, I just brought up the Ty Gibbs from yesterday and how, dominant one car can be, and then, kapoom, it's gone. So you really got to look at it from that perspective. I do kind of like the guys up front more this week than what I do last week, because last week we had a slew of place differential drivers to choose from and a slew of, solid cars in those positions. This week, we don't have a large amount of, place differential drivers starting from the back who have that ability to get up front. So, might not see, large scores this week. And then, only gaining a couple spots here or there could be the difference for you. Let's put it this way. There's nobody like William Byron who's going to be in a fast car starting dead last and being scored from dead last this week. Not even close. So back to the dominators and all that. I like these guys a little bit more, but I still want to be cautious with them because, they can kill you. And back to what Jay was saying at the beginning of the show was, these are going to be some of the higher owned drivers. And, they don't get any points. They lose points. Those lineups are going to be dead. So I definitely don't want more than 2 in my lineups. Most of them will have 1. I'll have some that don't have any. Because if you go back and you look at this race, 11 out of the past 12 races here have been won from the first 3 rows, starting position 6 and lower. But of those 11 to 12, only 1 has been won by the pole sitter. So, we don't have the normal names, that we typically see up front this week. And, everybody's kind of looking at like last week, we didn't see any cautions. Well, that doesn't mean they're not going to be cautions this week. And the more cautions we see in this race, the more that, drivers can flip it and play strategy and so on and so forth. So I want to be kind of cautious from that aspect. But, based upon what I saw yesterday in practice, I think the 2 best cars right now are William Byron and AJ Allmendinger. They both practiced well. and they both put down really good qualifying laps. Denny Hamlin's on the pole. He was on the pole at Sonoma, Chicago road course. Then last week he didn't show up. He's back again this week, showing he has some speed. One concern with Denny is he didn't have that speed during practice. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean, that he's bad or anything. He could have been behind traffic. He could have got slowed on one or two laps that really, don't show the true meaning of what his car is there for. I'm just saying he just didn't seem to have that speed that William Byron and AJ Allmendinger had throughout the entire session yesterday. So, I'm going to like the two of them before Denny. I am going to have a little bit of Denny. Kyle Larson, I think, after Byron and AJ Allmendinger had the best car, in my opinion. My concern with Larson, though, is he hasn't had that top line speed this year on road courses. I'm going to have a little bit of him. I had him as a fade in the playbook. I'll go back and change it. But, the guy's just too good up there. Hendrick Motorsports is just too good here in general. So I'm going to have a little bit of him. Mike McDowell, the one thing that worries me about him is that price, man. If I think people are going to go away because of that price, 9,600 is a lot to pay for Michael McDowell and something that we really haven't seen. I'll have a little bit of him also. But, that's kind of where, I stand on the front. Like, very few lineups with two of them. William Byron and AJ Allmendinger will be my two highest owned drivers. And then, like I said, I'll have some lineups that don't have any of the drivers starting up in the front. Ty Gibbs is another driver up there. He was really good last week. After Byron, he was probably the only car that showed that he could drive through the field and pass, but he never got up there to pass the elite cars. So, I could see him, being one of those drivers that just kind of hang out in that spot all day and doesn't earn anything for you.
So a few things I want to talk about because some of this stuff's interesting. Like McDowell at 9,600 feels insane. Insane. Like with no place differential upside. Granted, of course, if he wins, he's 9-1 to win. So in theory, of course, he can win, and that would make up that difference. But I'm looking at ownership, 15% ish, 14%. Walk me through this, Coop, because he feels like a really good fade at this price, just because of what he needs to do for you.
I think you're exactly right, because people are going to look at it and be like, $9,600 for Michael McDowell, or I can pay $8,800 for William Byron, who's been really good all year long, and showed a lot of speed. And I think Byron's going to get a lot of ownership strictly because of that,
Yeah, I think I'm trying to confirm. Yeah, so Byron looks like about maybe 17, 18%, something like that, maybe 16%. He's going to be a little higher than McDowell, but likely not too much more. But again, just based on peripherals, you would expect by the time people actually submit their lineups, Byron should be at least 5 to 8% higher owned than McDowell, at least based on win equity, based on he's closer to the front. You're going to want laps. Man, McDowell has been super good on these tracks, though. So I get the price. It just feels crazy. I guess we'll talk to another price that kind of feels a little crazy in Ryan Blaney. But
like if you look at the prices, like between DK and FanDuel, like Byron is like right there between the same price between both, basically on Allmendinger, same price between both on Gibbs. Denny is exact same price. Michael McDowell's 9,600 on DraftKings, 11,500. Like there's $2,000 more on FanDuel. Just a tough play, man, at that price.
Yeah, so I think it's hard to fit McDowell in. Again, he can work out for you for sure. Mm-hmm. But if he truly is going to be 15% owned, like I'd argue at that price, he's going to have to lead you some laps, number one, and he's likely going to have to win the race, because you're going to get points from place differential guys anyway. If McDowell's 8K is a totally different conversation. He's not. So I just think he's tough. When you talk about upside, like you basically need him to win the race. Practically need him to win the race, because even if he gets in second at 9,600 and doesn't lead a single lap, I don't know if he's in the optimal, Coop, not at 9,600.
Like, if he was starting 12th through 15th, it would be great because he's got some place differential upside. He just doesn't have it. He's got so much risk right now.
Yeah, I don't like that play at all. To me, it's a complete fade. And again, he beats me, but I know for a fact that if the place differential guys do moderately well today, not even egregiously well, moderately well today, McDowell's going to have to win this race to find himself in your optimal, or lead a bunch of laps and end up in second or third. So one or the other. And I'm not convinced he'll do either, at least not when you compare it against 15% ownership. It's one thing if the dude's going to be 3% owned. He's not. So that's kind of the take there. Take it or leave it in that sense. All right, so let's move over to place differential drivers. Now, I mentioned Ryan Blaney a moment ago because as egregious as McDowell's price is, I'd argue Blaney's is just as egregious in the opposite direction. However, I don't like his betting market numbers at all. Like, it almost is like no one's expecting him to do anything in this race. Yet, he's going to be 30+% owned because he's super low priced for Ryan Blaney. People might see that name and think, okay, 7,500, he might drop into a bucket where he makes sense to play because of that. But he's right next to Brad Keselowski, who has much better equity all around today, who's going to be similarly owned, and who's starting from a place back than Blaney. Talked on those two first, Coop, and then talk on some other guys you like, because I do think the Blaney conversation is interesting today. I've said this for the longest time. When Blaney's more than 25% owned, I basically never play him. Today's definitely going to be one of those days. If he beats me, he beats me. What are we doing with Ryan Blaney today?
I'll definitely have some Ryan Blaney. When you look at him and compare him to Keselowski, neither one of them are great road course drivers, but I give Blaney the edge over Keselowski. And just to think, he just needs a top 15 because of his price. He doesn't have to get a top 10 or anything like that. And again, we don't have a lot of these drivers who are starting, in the back that have that top 15, so to say, upside. There's no Will Byron, in this group right here. So, again, I don't know if you necessarily need to look at 5 times the value. You just want to have those 6 scores this week. And it wouldn't surprise me if 1 or 2 of the top 6 don't hit the 5 times the value that you're looking for. Strictly because there's just not a lot of, points out there available, in my opinion. Ross Chastain, I think, is the pivot off of Blaney. He's more expensive. He's not doing as well. The expectations aren't, where they want them to be. But I think, both of these drivers also wouldn't surprise me if the race plays out right. They're one of the drivers that kind of stay out at the end of, to try to get points for the end of stage 2, because they know they don't have a lot of, win upside. So they're just out there trying to collect points for the championship and things of that nature. So, they're putting themselves into a position too where they could earn a few Dominator points. What we saw last weekend, Denny Hamlin and Brad Keselowski do. They stayed out, and Hamlin accumulated some Dominator points. Kevin Harvick starting 33rd. That team was just abysmal yesterday. All 4 of the cars were just slow and slow. He doesn't have his regular crew chief because of some family issues going on there. And, I think he's just looking to survive the day. Crazy things can happen. It's not like he's just going to give up and, not try or anything like that. I'll have a little bit of Harvick, but I don't have a lot of expectations for him. Chase Briscoe starting 26th. The difference between Briscoe this week and last week is last week I think he started 14th. This week he starts 26th. He showed last week he has some speed. He doesn't have speed. He's part of the Kevin Harvick team. They were just abysmal. And he's going to need some help from other drivers in order to get into the top 20 and, have a solid finish to be able to pay off. But again, crazy stuff happens. So, and he has upside. So I can't, just not play him. So I'll have a little bit of him. But Blaney's the one I really, I think has the most upside of these 4 drivers, even though he's going to be chalky.
Yeah, I'll be honest. They're all going to be chalky. Harvick, Yeah, Harvick's going to feel like if Blaney feels like a free square today, Harvick's really going to feel like a free square. It's interesting that you said he's slow because, I know you said Blaney really only needs to move up 8 spots to kind of find himself in the optimal, because if he moves up 8 spots, that's going to put him.
Harvick just needs a top 20.
Yeah, Blaney moves up 8 spots. That's going to put him around that 36, 37 point area. And at 7,300, that's fine. Maybe not enough to be in an optimal, but it's definitely not going to hurt you. Whereas Harvick, just needs to move up 13 spots from 33rd. And if he does that, he would be 23, 30. He would be about 38, 39 points himself at a slightly higher cost. But yes, if any of these guys, that's the problem if you fade these guys, any of them, because you fade Harvick and you see him roaming around the, 19th, 20th place. He's already basically in the optimal, which would be very unfortunate if you faded him. Just last thoughts there, Coop, on fading these guys.
He started last week, almost dead last to, William Byron. Like, he didn't run well at all, but he still finished with a good finish, from where he started. Nothing spectacular, but he was fine for you if you played him in DFS last week. So that's kind of what worries me this week. The same thing could have kind of happened.
Yeah, and it definitely makes sense. When you talk equity odds, like Harvick is slightly behind Ryan Blaney, despite starting 10 spots behind him. So, just something to consider in terms of food for thought there. I personally would prefer Harvick, but I'll be honest, like, I'm not totally against fading all of them. Briscoe, Harvick, Blaney. I mean, these guys are all going to be super high owned, and I'm not in love with the idea that any of them make it into the optimal. They can, of course, they can, but they're all going to be crazy high owned too. So, anyway, let's move on to the next section. Now, this section here, middle tier drivers, I'm very interested in one driver in particular, and that's really the favorite of this race, Chase Elliott. So we'll talk on more of the other guys you have in this list, Coop. But Chase Elliott, when you take this, all things considered, he's coming from 15th. He absolutely needs this win. So when you're talking about like tournament upside, sure, he could flop, not do anything for you. But for a fact, when you put Chase Elliott in your lineup today, he is going to give it his all to win this race today. That could end up being a bad thing because he might go too aggressive. But these are his best courses or best tracks. And he gives you the place differential upside. He gives you laps led upside, considering he is the favorite for the race. And it's not common at all. So this is really what I want to talk. It's not common at all that you see a track like this where a guy like Chase Elliott is starting from 15th and he's still the pre-race favorite to win the race. Walk me through your thoughts on Chase Elliott, because I'll be honest, as far as quote-unquote locks go, he feels like he would be as close as to one would exist on a course or track like this. So give me your thoughts there, Coop.
So, he has 2 wins here. As you hit on, he needs a win to get into the playoff. It's his only chance. He was solid in practice yesterday. Then, he wasn't great in the qualifying lap. And, basically afterwards he said that the car was better than the driver and that he made some mistakes, that, typically, he wouldn't make. So I think he is going to be good today. I think, if you're playing Chase, you want to play him with the mindset that there's going to be at least 1, if not 2 or 3 caution flags. Because if we don't see the caution flags and we see a race like what we saw last week, there's no chance he has a chance to win. Because you're just not going to drive from 15th to 1st. You're going to fall too far back. But if we do see those and, he gains a couple spots on each one of them and then eventually gets up there, he could be in for contention. I think the other piece too, if you're playing Chase Elliott, then you're only going to have one of the aforementioned drivers we had in the lineup before, or you're going to have none, because I don't know if it's feasible for him to expect to get any Dominator points from him. All his upside pretty much comes from place differential. And if he gets a second, he's going to hit his value. But I think this is another situation to where, these other drivers struggle, and he ends up being one of the highest or the highest place differential guy on the slate. and his salary really doesn't matter. It's just the pure points that matter. I'll have a pretty good amount of Chase Elliott because I do think he is going to do well today. So the piece, though, is, you have Martin Truex, who is a little bit cheaper, and he's starting 19th, has more place differential upside. I don't think he has the finishing position upside that Chase Elliott has, but I also don't think you're going to have near as much ownership on Martin Truex as what you're going to have on Chase Elliott. I can see a path to where you play both of them together also, and you're not playing, like the Blaney and the Harvick and the Briscoe type of plays, and you're hoping that both of them, end up being the top two place differential drivers on the slate. But I think, Martin's the obvious pick of pivot-wise off of Chase Elliott. But in the middle tier, I like Alex Bowman too. I think he's the least riskiest of all these drivers. Starting 18th, he has top 10 upside. He can get there. Cindric is the pivot off of him. He's starting right in front of him, so one less place differential point. And Cindric hasn't been, not that Bowman's been great this year, but Cindric has been really, really bad. And Cindric's a little bit more expensive, so again, he's going to be cheaper owned. Joey Logano is a risky play in this format. Really don't know what we have from Joey Logano because, he had an accident with himself at the beginning of last week. So, he could come out and be really good. He could come out and be really bad. The one piece, though, like his crew chief, Paul Wolf, is really good with strategy. And without having these guaranteed cautions, that kind of hurts the strategy piece. So that could take away from him a little bit. But he only needs to improve a couple spots, to make value. But again, he has a lot more downside than what he does upside. And then, Daniel Suarez, $9,500, starting 14th. We kind of said that, earlier McDowell was this price and he was starting around here. We would be interested in him. Definitely interested in Suarez. He was a big disappointment yesterday in practice. He was very slow. Went in, fixed the car, got a little faster, went back in, fixed the car, got a little bit faster. Come qualifying, he never got up to the top tier speed, but he continued to improve. And I think that's what we're going to see again here today. I do have a little bit of interest in Suarez because I don't think he's going to get a lot of ownership because of that $9,500 price tag either.
Yeah, I'm trying to see. It looks like Suarez, sub 20%. So nothing crazy for sure. And just a lot of information there overall, right? In terms of where you want to go with sticking points. Question for you, Coop. Guys that need points versus guys that don't. Because we saw it last week, right? Where guys kind of overwent to win stages, knowing that it would impact their ability to win the race because they wanted stage points. Who do we think in this race, like where we might see that from, where they might sacrifice win equity to just get some stage points?
Possibly Joey Logano. I think if he stays up front early, maybe not. But if he falls back, then definitely. I think he's a contender to do that. I think Brian Blaney is a contender to do that. Ross Chastain, Brad Keselowski, and Bubba Wallace all could be, fighting for some stage points. Not necessarily stage one, but stage two.
Yeah, Bubba Wallace at very low ownership today, like very low ownership today. And it makes sense, right? He's been pretty tough on these courses or these tracks. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm looking at that. That is an interesting number on him. All right, so let's move on. Before we do it, let's peek the chat quick because I know it's been a while since I've gone around. Let's see, Apone, Coop, love the playbook this week. So for folks that aren't sure, that's at runpuresports.com. Code NFL20 to get yourself 20% off lifetime all packages. So check that out. And Apone, glad you enjoyed the Coop playbook, and kudos to you there, Coop. And we've been running through this playbook anyway, so none of this should seem totally crazy. Thoughts on frozen cold custard as a place differential play, Coop?
We'll get to him in a little bit, but I did, if you're looking for a risky bet, I did take some shots and I threw 0.2 units on the 4 or the 5 drivers I just mentioned to win stage 2 because I think it could happen. The numbers that I got on them was all like 50 to 1 or better. I did get Bubba at 250 to 1. So, I just think that, it depends upon how it plays out. I think, if they're in that situation to where they want to be able to race for playoff points to help them out, those would be the better opportunity drivers to choose from.
Good stuff. And I'll touch on Anthony G's comment. JJ, drink some water. You're looking real Italian right now. Imagine drinking water like ever.
You don't drink water. Wait a minute. You don't drink water.
I drink a ton of water. I
was going to say, okay.
Kind of being facetious, but all good. So maybe the hat backwards, does it make me look a little less Italian? Probably not, right? But no, I appreciate that, Anthony, because actually when I woke up this morning and wanted to do the shows, I was like, you know what? How do I make sure I look extra Italian today? So I'm glad you pointed that out. So I appreciate it. Work well done by me. Obviously all in good fun, Ant. Chili, watching replay now, seeing the haters are out. Yeah, Chili, look, we attack the haters, okay? We run at the haters because they can go fuck themselves. So, yeah, that's never going to stop. So I appreciate you you liking the transparency. Elliott, final lap bandit. Elliott got his first career win at the Glen. Truex has been the best racer in NASCAR this year. Definitely, he's come on like really late. Like it was Byron for a long stretch of the season, and the Truex has just been really good. What's up, Maddie? Hope all is well. Busher live. Chris Busher again. I mean, I know that it's a track he theory could do well at. Again, I know we haven't really mentioned his name much. Coop, any thoughts on Busher, who's priced higher than I certainly like him to be, but the win equity's there again, and he hasn't had less than 39 points in 3 straight weeks, and he's had that in 4 of his last 5. No, I'm sorry, he's had 39 points in 6 of his last 7 races. He has not hurt you much at all. Any thoughts on Busher?
Yeah, I was a little disappointed in Chris yesterday. I thought he would have been a little faster than what he did. Not that he was slow by any means or anything. I just don't know if he has that car to get to the top 5, which is where he wants to be. If he was like 8,500 or 8,600, maybe, in that range, I would take some shots. But I mean, at 9,100, like you're looking for 45 points, that's, I think, is going to be tough for him. But then again, like I said, like any of these drivers who, play the right strategy, if it, comes up and gets out front, like a Chris Busher, I think or a Suarez, like they're going to be tough to pass because all these cars are pretty close to each other.
Yes, and that's totally fair on that. And I think the 11 will be running for stage win. So Hamlin, I guess that's Hamlin as well, right?
Yeah. The stage 1, they'll definitely be running for the stage 1, the car starting out front.
Yeah, so you figure Hamlin kind of goes all in for that, very likely. He did the same thing last week, didn't he? Was that stage 2 that he did that in, where he kind of really recklessly went for that win? I'll tell you this, Stack. Obviously 201 above to win is crazy, but I'll be honest, as somebody who feels like I feel like I'm overexposed to Bubba Wallace every week. If he was to win this race, it would be hella tilting for me. But for him to win this race, Coop, you can correct me if I'm wrong. Bubba Wallace would probably need 30 cars to not finish this race to win this race.
Maybe not that many, but he would need a lot of stuff to happen. Like, Bubba's been a little bit better on these road courses than what he was last year. He's continually improving. Maybe give him another year, maybe 2, and he'd get up there. But I still think there's plenty of other road course drivers who have much better experience and results than him.
Fair indeed. And got the Italian from Keg. Possibly, we shall see. I could do a, what are the 23andMe or whatever it is. Get that data, and maybe I'll show up like 8% sports Keg. Like maybe that'll be part of my DNA. JJ working in the word facetious every week. Yeah, it's on my checklist. I have a certain list of items I need to accomplish on every show, and using the word facetious in the right manner is definitely on the checklist. So good there. Obviously, all love Ant Gaba goal, Jake. Reddick sneaky today. Just talk on Reddick quick, Coop, before we go to the value plays.
Yeah, Reddick is in that kind of group where I just don't think he has that top line speed, and the price is what's keeping me off of him. But then again, if he gets to the front, he's going to be tough to pass. But I just don't see a path to where he gets to the front. So I'll be passing on him.
All right, cool. Let's move over to your value plays. We went through the middle tier. So value, who do you like to on the cheaper end to round out lineups? Because arguably you'll need one of these guys in your lineups to win big.
Yeah. There's nobody down here really that I'm in love with by any means, but I'll go back to Todd Gilliland. He disappointed last week. I still think he's the best, road course driver and pretty good equipment, based upon his peers down here. Has a nice starting position. And, I don't think we see as much ownership on him this week as last week. I think he's going to be a nice pivot off Eric Jones. I think people are going to go to Eric Jones because of, him starting 31st, the name, so on and so forth. The guy just hasn't been in great equipment so far. I'd rather play Ricky Stenhouse, than Eric Jones too. Just not that Ricky's great or anything, but it's just one of those things. Stuff happens, and he could easily go out and beat him. Haley, I have listed here, but with Haley going to the back, I will probably fade him now. Just don't see the upside. Before when he was starting 20th, I thought maybe if he held that positioning and maybe improved a couple spots, he could be low owned and sneaky. But I just think starting in the back is going to be too hard for him. Austin Dillon, I think, is going to get a decent amount of ownership starting 16th. He had a great run last week. He's getting better on these road courses, but I still think he has too much downside. And things have worked really well for him. And who's to say you can't come up with one bad break. And the last guy I'll take a shot on is Rockenfeller. He's the teammate of Eric Jones. He's probably, the best road course driver amongst these drivers. The question is the equipment. Legacy has struggled all year, being able to provide fast cars. But, he took a, not so fast car last week and did well with it. So I don't think a lot of people start him in their lineups because of the starting position. But I think if he holds that or picks up a couple spots, he's going to be really good for you.
Question I see on the chat. Obviously, we mentioned a few names going to the back. Keselowski, he's one of them as well, Coop?
Yeah, he's going to the back. Cole Custer's going to the back. Haley's going to the back. And Corey LaJoy, last I saw.
What's your thought? Because Keselowski, I thought just based on merit alone, out of the group of chalky place differential guys, I thought Keselowski was the best option. I obviously can't think that now on a track that's going to be relatively hard to pass, and you have, Keselowski now moving to the back. Does he become, especially since he's likely still going to see ownership, does he become almost unplayable today, dare I say?
Close. I think what you're going to see from Brad is a strategy like what we saw last week from Denny Hamlin. And it could help him pick up some, place differential points here and there. But I think top 25 would be great for him. Starting all the way back there. Unfortunately, that's about where he's being scored from. So I think there's a lot more risk in him.
And just to be clear, all this I think now has Kevin Harvick starting in 30th. Is that correct? Like starting the race in 30th?
Well, he'll be scored from 33rd, but starting,
That's what I guess what I'm getting at is now the guy that needed to move up 13 spots now he needs to move up 10.
Exactly. You're right.
So it makes it hard. It makes it actually like I wasn't going to be a big Harvick fan, but like, man, like it doesn't need a lot for you today.
Right. Right. You're exactly right. And like, you don't think of it like a lot, but it means a lot more on this road course than what it would on a mile and a half or a short track and things of that nature.
Yeah, interesting indeed. And I think it puts even more onus on some of these cheap guys that were going to start from the somewhat of the back because, now they organically move up a bit. Obviously, we're not big Ty Dillon or Josh Bilicki guys, but, now these guys are starting 3 or 4 spots higher at priced at nothing, like less than 5K. Do you want to just briefly talk on a guy like Ty Dillon and Josh Bilicki who are now going to be scored from starting 3 to 4 spots higher?
Yeah. I mean, you can take your shots on them. I don't think they're necessarily needed in this slate because of the pricing. Maybe if you go with, Truex and Chase Elliott in your lineup, you might want to dip that down in that ballpark to be able to save you some money and, not have to play 2 or 3 of the guys in the 7K range or lower. But, I really only play those guys at Daytona and Talladega, and that's probably what I'll stick to again here.
All right, cool. Let's let's hit the chat right before we get to the fades, Coop. Jimmy, yeah, we spoke on the good idea to fade. So if you have any further questions there, definitely let us know. Should be good there. Bet some 45. Don't blame that. Hope the pick crew shows. Reddick's been fucked the last few weeks.
Hey, one other thing. You just mentioned pit crew, all right? And it made me think of one driver in particular, and that's William Byron. We got Denny Hamlin up front. He's going to be competing with. We know what kind of issues he has on pit road and with his pit crew. You've got Michael McDowell, not the greatest pit crew, all right, up there around him. You've got Larson, who will be up there, fine pit crew. But Allmendinger, not the greatest pit crew. But William Byron, pit crew, been on fire, big time. And, there's only going to be 2 stops. And if they lay down 2 great stops, that could be a big advantage for him on the track over those type of drivers. Same can be said for Ty Gibbs, though, too, because his pit crew's been pretty good, too. But I think, if you're looking at those 6 drivers that are starting up front, like William Byron and Ty Gibbs, I think both of them have a big advantage over Dinger, McDowell, and Hamlin. And then I would put Larson third, slightly behind those 2. But I think they could pick up some time if they lay down some great pit stops.
It makes a lot of sense to me. That's part of the reason why Byron's been great. I mean, Byron, of course, has been great, but let's be honest, that pit crew's been phenomenal. Feels like every race he's gaining seconds there over the field, not just over certain drivers, over the field.
Right.
So, kudos to his crew. Do you think the winner comes outside the top 3 qualifiers?
If I had to pick a winner right now, I would go with Byron or Dinger.
Dinger's interesting because, to me, I would look at him as the driver that I wouldn't necessarily have a lot of today. But, your conviction there is going to make me keep him in my pool.
This is his best road course by far. He hasn't been great by any means on road courses in the Cup Series, unlike the Xfinity where he's dominated. But this track has been very good for him.
No, it's good to know. Good to know. Reddick Sports, Dunkel, cool as shit, takes confident and helpful. Also, Coop has a very high DFS IQ. Red CYC, can I screenshot this chat and show it to my wife? I feel like she forgets how fucking cool I am sometimes. I mean, I don't know. I don't understand how that can happen, but I do feel like she forgets. So it's always nice to have a third party remind her from time and again. But no, all love, appreciate it, Red. Always appreciate the positivity. Jimmy B, beer or wine? I'm not sure what that's in reference to be honest. But definitely, I'm a wine guy. I don't know about you, Coop. I'm definitely more of a wine guy. I spit out beer. Coop, what are you? Are you a wine guy, a rosé guy, or IPA beer? None of it. Don't even drink. I respect it. Wow.
Very little. Very little.
Yeah, we all have vices, and clearly drinking is not one of yours. So much respect. Much respect. Favorite play today, Chris? We'll do that right after we talk on Coop's fade. So that's coming. And Jake said he's off Dinger today. His Cup Series car, not the same caliber as his Xfinity ride. Might be some truth there. I guess tough to tell. Dinger let me down last week. I was overweight, very much so on Dinger last week. I know he was somewhat popular. He did let me down. So just want to briefly touch on that, Coop, in terms of Dinger with the Xfinity versus here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they're night and day, but I think it goes back to what I said earlier. These cars are so equal to each other, and it showed in those speeds that they had. But I think Dinger can make that car a little bit better because of his road course prowess.
Yeah, definitely. I can't mind that. Again, you kind of convinced me to keep some because I was going to cross him off my pool. All right, let's move over to your fades, Coop, and then we'll talk on favorite plays. So fades today. Who are you taking some conviction stands on in relation to not putting into your lineups?
So I have Larson listed, but I'll definitely have a little bit of him. Chris Bell, Tyler Reddick, Kyle Busch, my top 3. It just comes down to the price for them. I don't know. It's going to take something for them to get up there, and I don't know if it's going to be something available. And then, who do you pick between Bell, Reddick, or Busch? I don't know. I could see one of them doing well, but not all 3 of them. That way I'm just going to.
I'm not sure if that's me or him. So if somebody can type in the chat, I'm not sure if you could hear me or just not hear Coop anymore. But just let me know that I'm still here. Assuming I am, I'm happy to pick up where he left off in case Coop did lose internet briefly. Anybody? Bueller? Anyone in the chat? Still here? Yay, nay? All right. So you're here. Good. Woo. I'm still here. What a what a fortune. All right. So I'll just continue to read off who's in his playbook here. Obviously without as much conviction, because obviously Coop put these guys in there for a reason. But I will talk on who he has in this list. You already mentioned Larson, Bell, Reddick. I can't disagree with these as a whole. Bell makes a ton of sense to fade based on his price, what he has to do. Reddick, I mean, you could make the argument he's very good at these tracks, just hasn't been good lately. So I don't totally mind that. And Larson, look, you're going to get somewhat. Whoa, just like that. I'm split screen. This is actually the best I've ever looked. It's like whoa, left, right, east, west. Let me just change this for you before you guys kind of lose your minds. All right, so he already mentioned the fact that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought just being an idiot. Kyle Larson is going to be sub 15% owned. And it's like I always change it. Like my thoughts on Larson in particular, like when he's this low owned, I almost just want to play him because week in and week out, he consistently is just a high owned driver. And when he's not owned, you just kind of want to feel like you want to get a part of that leverage. But man, this year on tracks where he's been low owned, he has not done well. He has burned me some cash this year. Me trying to take those leverage pivots and go double the field on Larson. It's not something I'm going to do here. He's burned me way too often doing so. So I couldn't agree more with Coop there. And Coop, good timing. Welcome back. There was a brief. Oh, can you hear me, Coop? Oh, just like that. Gone again. Maybe he didn't like my face or something. He popped in, was like, nah, fuck this. I'm out again. In relate, you know what? Before I even go on, we'll give him another chance. Coop, we good? You there? Nope. All right. So I'll wait for a better signal from him. But in between, I've already obviously spoke on Larson. I think he's a good fade overall. And I'm going to fade him. Look, if he burns me today, he burns me today. But I'll tell you this, he's burned me so much money playing him in these leverage spots. So I definitely agree with Coop there. And we'll move down the list a little further in terms of who he has here. So Kyle Busch, he also mentioned, was a fade, which makes sense. And Corey LaJoy. So I'm trying to see if I know Coop's in the lobby here. I'm trying to see if Coop.
Internet wasn't working, man.
Oh, you're good though. You're back.
So, yeah.
You're back. I'll tell you this. Maddie brings up a good point. Terrible mojo for Larson there to have to fade now because you were talking about fading. I jumped in the conversation when you left and continued to talk about fading him, and just you could not regain internet during that. Are you one that believes in karma like that? Like where, we're kind of so negative on a really good driver and the world
could be.
The world around us is trying to tell us otherwise.
He could be the one that puts us in our grave today.
It just buries us alive.
Yeah, he is. Could be. Like I said, I just haven't seen that top tier speed. Like he's kind of like Ty Gibbs to me. I think he could just stay in 4th or 5th place all day and not do anything relevant for you DFS wise.
Yeah, and again, I don't want to beat a dead horse. We've spoken about him quite a bit. You want to pick up where you left off? I know you talked.
They're so risky though because if he finishes second, has a great race but doesn't get any Dominator points, he's going to be nothing for you. Nothing. But no, you mentioned LaJoy. I can't play LaJoy starting 10th, and now he's going to the back. Bubba,
LaJoy feels like a very
12th.
Yeah, LaJoy feels like a very easy fade. So I definitely agree.
Keselowski I was off of before. Priest and Amarola, slow cars. I just don't see them moving forward. Somebody had spoken about Cole Custer earlier. I don't mind Cole Custer if you want to take a shot at him. I'd rather take a shot at him than Bilicki or Ty Dillon. He's the better road course driver of the three, although Bilicki's not bad himself. But he just didn't seem like he had good issues. He had all kinds of issues yesterday in practice. So the car might have some issues and, might not allow him to, get his full potential. But I just don't see where you need to play those guys because of the salary piece.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a lot to digest there overall. In terms of fades, or anybody else you want to talk on? Obviously, this list is quite long.
No, I think I covered most of them.
Yeah, you definitely spoke all these names. Obviously, you definitely spoke on practically all of them. So I think we're good there. And let me ask you this: based on the drivers moving to the back, does it make you feel any better? I know we briefly touched on this. Does it make you feel any better about those guys like Ty Dillon that are under 5K? Now obviously being scored from a few spots ahead.
Right. I mean, it does make me feel better because, I don't think Justin Haley has like a super machine car, or maybe Corey LaJoie does based upon what he did in practice. But I don't think any of these drivers have that great of a car to where they can just drive right back up through. So you could see them, holding on to that position.
Awesome. We'll talk on our favorite drivers for the slate. So Coop, I will take this first, unless you have a guy right off the top of your head that you want to bring up your favorite driver pound for pound on the slate.
Go ahead.
But I do have one. I'm trying to just pull up I was in the middle of about to run the optimizer, so let me just cancel it. I'll be honest, call me crazy. Starting from 17th, I really like Cindric today. Just feels like a good piece to your lineup. Doesn't have to do a lot for his price. I'd argue top 10, Coop. If he gets in the 10th position, 9th position, he's likely going to be good enough for us today. And I'll be honest, it's not crazy to think he lands in the top 10. He's got good betting market peripherals. He's typically pretty good on these tracks. He's priced well on a slate where I'd argue there's a lot of guys overpriced, at least for, when you talk win equity and what they can actually score today. So I really like Cindric. I don't want to consider him a lock. And to be clear, in terms of guys I'm going to be way overweight on, definitely Chase Elliott for me. I think that Cindric, though, makes a lot of sense. And then pairing with a bunch of cheaper drivers towards the bottom. But I just think Cindric makes all the sense in the world to play today. I'm not saying he's going to win. He might in theory, but I think he's a phenomenal play today. Coop, give me some thoughts on Cindric and then talk on who your favorite play is for the slate.
No, I like the Cindric play. He's going to be a nice pivot off of Bowman in the ownership aspect. 8,400 is a pretty price tag to play for him, considering what results that he's had. So I don't think he gets much ownership. But dollar for dollar, pound for pound, I think Chase Elliott today has the most upside. And I'm looking at it from a price, not necessarily a price per dollar perspective, but just a pure out points perspective. I think, I would feel much more confident going heavier on Chase Elliott than some of these other drivers who might have that upside, but I think Chase Elliott is going to get there. And then along the lines of a lower owned, maybe sneakier type of play that I don't think people are going to play a lot of. I don't like putting Daniel Suarez with Austin Cindric. I think if you combine those two together, they're not going to be paired that much, and they're not going to be paired often. But if you look at the potential upside both of them have on road courses, I think it bodes well for you.
Yeah, love it. Love it all around. And I'm definitely going to play Elliott, highest owned driver on the slate from Jake. I'll be honest.
I think Byron might be a little higher.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be Harvick. That's the highest owned driver on the slate. I think when you add in the fact that Keselowski gets pushed to the back, Blaney's going to certainly see ownership, and other guys certainly will see ownership. I've just crossed a lot of these dudes out, but Harvick is going to see a good amount of ownership today. Whether you're a big Harvick fan or not, he's going to see ownership today primarily because, again, he's now going to be scored from 30th, and he has to move up 10 spots. So might not have a great car. And then when you look at who he actually has to pass to get up 10 spots, it's like he just has, whether he has a good car or not, he's going to have the opportunity to move up. As far as a core from me, Jimmy, I obviously like Chase. I obviously like Cindric. I mean, I'm just looking at my ownership numbers. Hold on, because I did run the sim, but this isn't going to be my final sim. I'll be honest. I do like Gilliland today. The thing is I'm going to be higher on those two guys, and I'm going to be scattered on a bunch of the rest. So I'd love to give you that hard in lock that I'm going to have as that third. But I'll be honest, it's going to be a mix of a bunch of guys that kind of round up my lineups after those two in particular. But again, the sport has so much variance in it. I wouldn't want anybody to lock anybody in per se. You know, you can go overweight on certain guys, but I'll be honest, you want a third guy there. I guess Harvick. It's just Harvick to me is just hard not to play. Like, to me, if his car just stays upright, like, I don't know how he hurts you today. If he just stays upright.
Right.
And that's really what it comes down to. He's a guy that has a very low percentage risk to hurt you today. Of course, if he gets into an accident or gets wrecked, sure. But if he stays upright, he has the upside to obviously be in the optimal and the floor to really not hurt you. So I do kind of like that end. All right, Coop, we've gone through everything. We did it in a little over an hour. I blame myself. We went down some rabbit holes, which is I have myself to blame for that. Folks, you have about an hour or so-ish to start building your lines, about an hour and 10 minutes. So wish you all the best of luck. Thanks, as always, for chiming in the chat. Obviously, love you guys commenting. We always love getting to your questions as well. So appreciate you guys all on that front. I wish you guys all the best of luck today. Gamble responsibly, stay safe, and as always, run pure. NFL 20% off for life. Head over to runpuresports.com. See you guys next week.